I'm Meredith Fuller, psychologist and author. We're talking with people about their experiences of love with interviews and consideration of psychological theory and research. We have an information sheet to accompany the interviews on my website, meredithfuller.com.au. I'm interested in your experience of love. Here are what some other people say.
You tend to sort of, not be able to express it as well in language because it's not a language state. It's an emotional state. It's a state of being. When you're in love, it's like the two broken pieces of the jigsaw fit together perfectly, and you and this other person, doesn't matter what it looks like to other people, whether other people could have put the puzzle together or not, you found yourself in this situation where all of a sudden everything makes sense and is okay.
Respecting each other, valuing each other, letting each other continue to grow as a couple and as individuals, I think is really important.
Yeah, trust is a massive one for me.
But if I was just talking about straight love, it's a mutual understanding and unconditional rules. As soon as all the conditions come in, you go, well, what's that all about?
I think I spent quite a lot of time learning what love wasn't, and that took me quite a few years to figure out what love wasn't before I began to understand what love actually was and what it could be, and more importantly what love meant to me. And it took me a long time to understand that the only way to figure out what love was for me was to love myself.
I think self-love is honestly probably the most important. And I think with self-love also comes how you give out your love.
And compassion and care and understanding and joy and respect. And I have those kinds of love relationships with my friends as well. And in that sense, I feel completely loved without having the need to be in a relationship with somebody. So I'm very happily single, yeah.
Same as Gary in the sense that I couldn't live without him, and I realised how deep our connection was, and as I said, I'd never had that in my life and I didn't want to lose that.
Just calm, trust, no paranoia, no second guessing. Don't, that's love. To be able to, talk to someone and actually believe what they're telling you is truth.
To me, love, I suppose, is being comfortable with somebody, being able to express yourself, being able to be yourself, being accepted, being valued, being understood.
I think that's the foundation of our relationship, is that we were so close and we were such good friends, and I always knew that I could trust him. And then we felt we started dating or whatever, and I've just felt safe and secure and in love ever since.
It was really about how to find love, which I think I did, and it's given me a great feeling of peace, and I think I'll live longer.
I was like, this is really easy. I never felt anything so easy.
I'm not married, I don't have a significant other in life as in a partner, but I'm surrounded by love. I have 5 grandchildren, I have 2 children, I have more friends that'll help me bury a body in the backyard that I can, count on one hand.
Love between two adults is much more of a negotiation and much more of something you got to work at. And it's built on the meeting of the minds and the trust and the commitment, and that's got to move and develop as time goes along.
So not about what society was telling me that love was, even what my traditional family of love is, getting married, having children, and just passing that down generation to generation. That was one of the things that I found wasn't love for me. And over the years I had relationships, I was engaged and I have been married before, and they were not loveless relationships, but it wasn't the kind of love that suited me.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, but as an introvert, it's really hard for me to open up and talk to other people. But with Devere, it's completely different. I can be open, I can be myself.
You don't live together. Can you tell us about that?
We both are in our 50s and we both already have somewhere to live. And they're both comfortable places with our own assemblages of the things we like. Mine is a tool collection and Kathy's is an art collection. So we're both happy in our little corners and we want to stay that way, and up 3 years later that's how we're still doing it, and with no plans to move in together. It gives us the right balance of time together and time apart.
And really quick backwards and forwards of writing. I knew I liked his mind. When I heard his voice, I was absolutely taken by him. This gorgeous voice. It was like I was knocked over for 6, and we talked for hours. And I actually realised at the end of the conversation, which was well into the night, that I was experiencing an oxytocin rush.
And I would tell her things that I hadn't told anybody, and she would tell me things that she hadn't told anybody, and the friendship the friendship grew. And then a few months into it, it started getting a bit scary and a bit real and a bit. And I remember I was getting scared. I was getting scared of how I was starting to feel about her, and I remember I sent her a text, and this might be I can't even remember how far into it was. I used to write to her. I used to write every morning. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would sit there and I would write just whatever was coming out of my head, and then I would send that to her in a message or an email or something, whatever. And then it got to a point about a few months in, and I thought, no, this is just this. If this goes any further than this, this is going to be really serious. And at that point, it was. Well, not at that point, but it was friendship. It was just like a deep, really, really deep connection and friendship. And I remember I sent her a text, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. It's getting, I can't remember the exact words, but basically it was, I can't do this. And I said to her, don't contact me because I will not be able to resist you. And I remember sending the text and I was just bawling my eyes out. And she friggin' rang me about 30 seconds after I sent the text, and I said, what are you doing? I told you not to contact me.
Love in my family was very there always. It was quite obvious that we loved each other. We talked about it all the time and we were always doing stuff together, and I think it was mostly about spending a lot of time together. And even now, even to this day, when I call my mum, we end our phone call with I love you.
I love Doctor Who, like the old, not the new stuff, but the old school stuff. I absolutely froth it, and I think part of that is because some of my earliest memories of being alive is sitting in front of the TV with my dad, watching it.
I might say to myself, I love fishing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I love my dad and I love that time with my dad.
Yes.
And I kind of hide behind fishing as a bit of an umbrella to avoid having to say, I love my dad.
My family were quite dysfunctional, very traditional in the sense of a working class Northern English, half Irish family, but very dysfunctional in terms of there was some violence in my family. There was always a lot of tension in the house. So as a child I learned to stay quiet. I learned to stay in the background and at all costs do not rock the boat. And that went on for quite some time, probably till I was about 15 or 16 when I moved out of home, and I began to experience what other families were like. And just that growth that you go through as a late teenager, where you start to discover a bit more about yourself rather than your identity being who your mum and dad are.
The times were hard and there was never really enough to go around. So there's the priority of providing for the kids and getting them an education. So those kind of practical things, they were the priority above everything else. So there was not a family with sort of touching and affection and gushing or any of that. But at some level, I always knew that I was important, and no matter what happened, no matter what went wrong, my mother in particular would always be there. My father the same. He devoted himself to the family and to his children.
The older I get and the more kind of groups of people that I kind of churn through and work with in my life, they might come and or go or stay and leave, but it's always family that have kind of been there, as you said, unconditionally providing that. And it's not a tangible feeling, it's not something you can grasp or put your hand on, but it is something that is of the utmost importance to me, that the older I get and the more I realise about careers and art and society. It is kind of that one constant there.
We were always allowed to say our own piece. So if there was an argument happening, which the Australian friends of mine you would see, they always thought my mum and dad were fighting. When it was actually, to me, a discussion of...
robust debate.
Yeah, politics, cooking.
Because my older brother is not my father's son. He was a product of a wartime romance of my mother's. So the second thing I learned about love was about jealousy and resentment. Because, there was always this unspoken and from the rest of us not understood tension with my brother. Because we never knew the circumstances until much later. But my father's sort of continuous resentment of that prior relationship of my mother's, and his sort of jealousy of the affection from my mother that this boy enjoyed, that was just always there. So that's something that I felt that I learned to avoid in life, was getting into this kind of unconstructive pattern of resentment and jealousy.
I don't think I really saw love between my parents, and they divorced when I was 12. So the idea of a good partnership or marriage, I think I understood by absorbing what I saw on TV shows.
And even though my parents probably did fight a fair bit, really, but there was always a connection between them that was quite compelling, I suppose, in a way. So, yeah, I guess to me, love was complicated. It wasn't an easy thing.
What I know about love all comes from loss. The loss of my best friend from suicide, my brother-in-law, who drowned. Loss of very significant and important relationships made me aware of the potency of the opposite, which I'd never really experienced. My parents weren't demonstrative. They were good people, but they didn't have the tools. As many people growing up in suburban Melbourne in the 70s, we were all pretty similar. They lacked the tools, that the education wasn't there.
I feel like everything is right. It feels like it's the right fit with Tom. Everything seems comfortable, and I don't mean comfortable in a way that's boring or mundane, but I feel very safe and calm with Tom. I feel very protected and cherished and really appreciated.
I'd like to think that one can talk about anything and everything without feeling like they should or shouldn't. And I'm talking about arguing it, discussing it, even for the sake of being devil's advocate.
The other thing that I thought about Kate when we first met, just, I don't know, just mannerisms and way of doing things. She's a little bit quirky and a little bit different and a little bit interesting. And I thought, oh, you know, she got these big glasses and bag full of junk and all that. So she's just a little bit different and lively and pretty entertaining. So I thought, no, this is a happy person. And when we first met, I would think there are a couple of things that you pick up pretty quickly, like pretty similar kind of original background, Catholic working class from country town. So there's that shared experience and things that you can relate to.
James has brown hair and green eyes, and for a while before we started dating, people definitely used to tease us about looking like we were brother and sister, which made things really awkward when we did start dating.
There's, you know, this idea that we're attracted to the familial or the familiar, and so I guess there has to be a sense that, do I understand enough about this person, their values and who they are? I think, you know, there is a sense that we do seek similarities in partners, and so I guess if there's too much difference, perhaps that can cause issues. So I suppose it's about, do you feel comfortable with this person? Do you share common values? Do your family and friends, do they kind of approve this person? And I don't mean that in the usual sense, but often, you know, when you're in that first flush of love, family can see certain aspects of that relationship which you may not be able to see. So it's a funny one where most people don't want to ask others what they think of their partner, but it in fact isn't a bad way for people to I suppose road test, is this person a good fit for me?
We liked each other's profiles. In fact, I liked Tom's profile and realised I wasn't going to get anywhere because he wanted to meet someone younger than himself, and I was out of his age range. In the time from when I first found him online, he'd been out with some women who lied about their age and realised that going out with slightly older women, or much older women perhaps, could be interesting. And so he upped his age range, which meant that my profile came into view, and so he approached me and we started conversing online for about, perhaps a bit under a week.
He just really stood out to me. I don't know, we were maybe 15. We went out to our coffee shop and we sat at our table, and it was very nice and romantic, and James said, do you want to stop pretending that we're not dating?
So I got married for a family reason, or a Catholic reason.
Yes.
That is, Sharon was pregnant.
Yep.
We had a child.
What was it like, this relationship for you?
Oh, sadly it was a little antagonistic because there was two different views of what being married and bringing up children.
And how long before you realised this wasn't working?
Before I got married.
So I was 15 when I was introduced to my husband. I was 16 when we were betrothed, and I was 18 when we were married. We were a mismatch from the beginning. He was a very traditional man, and in a traditional marriage like that, there is no equality. I knew that I had to leave. I knew that I had to get out, but it took 10 years. It took, by the time I was 28, I knew that I was either going to die in that relationship or I was going to leave it. It was a constant stream of community, friends, family. It was weeks and weeks and weeks of people trying to change my mind. Finally, though, one day my mother said she was going to bring a priest around. What I didn't need was the church and a priest. Following that, though, what happened was that there were strange noises on my rooftop every night, and this went on for a week. I'd call the police. I had 2 children in the house. I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I was terrified. I thought somebody was trying to break into the house. This is 1986. I had 3 police officers in the front yard. What they discovered in that overnight was that my mother, in her infinite wisdom, who was a very religious person, and my ex-husband, who just couldn't accept any responsibility, so he felt that there had to be a reason why I had decided to leave after those 10 years, had hired an exorcist. They'd actually flown this man out from Greece, and he was caught throwing chicken bones or something like that on the rooftop of the house in order to undo the spell.
When Richard died, so when he died, I found myself in a totally different space to anything I'd ever imagined. Right. But in the end, the thing with love was that I had to become vulnerable again. I had to be prepared to be hurt, to experience what's worthwhile in love, because other than that, all I was having was sex. All I was having was emotionless interchanges with emotionless bodies.
When we repartner, there's so much history behind us, and so often people haven't resolved a whole lot of issues about past relationships, their grieving process, a whole range of things. So I guess, someone has to be reasonably kind of fit and able to enter into a new relationship without too much baggage, to use that term.
Tell us the stats about marriages.
Well, the current stats at the moment are that close to 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce. Yeah, why do couples get into strife? Financial pressures on couples will often get them into strife. Perhaps they lose respect for each other because they're not communicating appropriately. I think a lot of people can actually be helped early intervention through counselling. The other thing, of course, is, and we shouldn't underestimate, domestic violence, controlling relationships that don't reveal themselves as being either controlling or violent or abusive.
Often people are frightened to be by themselves, and so they might rush into a new relationship without understanding the complexities of what that involves with joining different family systems together. So, getting help to understand the sorts of people that you're perhaps attracted to. That could be, you might be making the same mistake of going towards people who are have certain characteristics that you're attracted to, but may not be the right sort of person for you.
If you're not online, you're probably likely to be spending the rest of your life unpartnered.
If the statistics are right that it might take 50 dates to meet the right person, most people just find that really daunting and hope that it will happen on the 2nd or 3rd date. But to maintain that energy through a process of meeting that number of people is really hard work.
It's a big world out there with who knows how many billion people online, so if you want to stand out, you've got to be, I think, as authentic as possible. Back on internet dating, it is a process. It's a rather mechanical process, but it really, really works. I know many people who are in great relationships from it.
And often people, when they're in an unhappy situation, they talk a lot to their friends and family, and you can get a lot of conflicting advice and ideas, and sometimes it's better to go to someone outside of your relationship that's qualified to help you navigate some things that can be overcome with someone who doesn't have a vested interest in your relationship. I think with younger couples, perhaps you get the sense that expectations are much higher. In generations now, sort of there's a lot of emphasis on love being the primary focus for a relationship, whereas ones that might have been financial and social and so on, those sorts of factors perhaps aren't as strong. And so there's marriage or relationships kind of has an intensity that perhaps hasn't been there in the past in different ways. So people's expectations of happiness and fulfillment are much greater. And for that reason, I think there's a greater sense of disappointment that their partner or the marriage or the relationship can't meet all their needs.
You can't love another person. You can't even love your children wholly and completely unless you know what self-love is.
Couldn't imagine doing it with anyone else.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, the self-love thing is huge. I mean, it is for me at the moment. Because I feel like I'm going through a period of real kind of change in which I'm changing and shifting the way I view love and view loving myself. And I think what you said about the way that you love yourself is the way that you give love, and it's a very necessary conversation to have. And this is the most, I think, I've sat down and spoken about love consistently.
I think this is the most.
And it's making me intrapersonally think about my own love life and the way that I love my family, my friends, my partner. And that's amazing. I think we should do that more often. I think I'd be a better person if I did that more often. I think nothing bad can come about being open and talking about love